Voters is like an awesome fit. For those that don't know who I am, Amy Hjersted. So I am the program chair for the League of Women Voters of the Eastern Upper Peninsula. I founded the local league back in 2013, and it's been doing great voter work since then. And there was actually a league back in the 1970s, but for whatever reason disbanded. The League of Women Voters as a whole, as a national organization, has just turned 100 years old. So this goes back to 1920, where women were fighting for the right to vote, and then within months, once it was concreted that we were definitely going to get the right to vote, the League of Women Voters transitioned and said, okay, now we have all these women who have won their right to vote. They've been fighting so hard. They have this incredible, strong organizing structure and network. Now we need to show them how to vote. Like, how does a ballot? What do you do with a ballot? How do you learn about the candidates? All of those things. And so that's when the League of Women Voters was actually formed. Was February 14th of 1920. So it's really cool, and we're really embracing the woman part of our title. So really believing in the power of women to make a more perfect democracy. Without women, without our struggle, without our lived experience, you don't really have a strong democracy, right? It's very one-sided. And so I'm really glad to hear women in business. I just learned about it when Max told me that there's this organization, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Because you are powering our city, you are powering the county and the different programs, and listening to each one of you talk about the different programs and the different talents that you bring to this area is incredible. So you're already invested in the work that we're doing, which goes along with what the league does, which is we embrace women getting involved civically. Not only do we want you voting and feeling informed and confident to vote, but we also want you at those board meetings. We also want you serving in board roles, like whether it's the zoning board or the planning commission or whatever, or county commission. We actually have no women serving on our county commission right now, and there hasn't been for quite some time. So this is all about women, our power, our leadership, our ability to connect people and raise up our families in the entire community. So a few things I wanted to share with you that are really important, especially to the work that you already do. One is census, so I'm going to get to that in a second. Two is we have an election coming up on Tuesday, and then we actually have 2 more elections happening this year, so I want to get on that. And then 3 is the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. And so there's three things. There's a lot more I could talk about that the League of Women Voters does, and I guess I should also back up real quick. So if you don't know about the League, we are nonpartisan, which means that we do not support or oppose candidates or parties ever. That is our sacred cow, and we will not mess with it. So we really are just about voter information and education. We are also an advocacy organization, so if we're talking about women assault and bills legislation that's coming up, we're out there campaigning, we're out there doing that work. If it has something to do with the environment or education or transparency in our government or fighting dark money in politics, we're advocating on those things. But for a lot of the work that we do here locally is voter education, outreach, mobilization, making sure, right now, because we have an election happening on Tuesday, constantly my Facebook Messenger and phone, people are like, I have a question about this and this and this. And so that's a lot of what takes up our time. So if you want us to come to your organization and talk about the different things that are on the ballot, how to vote, how to apply for absentee, we would love to come talk to you. Okay, so I'm going to transition. I'm going to pivot a bit. So census. Census is happening. Census Day is April 1st. And do you know what census is? Okay. Someone can just shout it out. What is census?
It's basically doing a head count.
Yeah. That's right. Yep, exactly. So it's trying to find where our people are at. So it's right now in the country, you take a number, where is everybody at? Because humans are so nomadic and we're all over the place and we move every 10 years or even more often. We need to know where you're at so that we can allocate those funds to your community. And so so there's some scary numbers in this. For every person in Michigan who doesn't answer that census, we lose $18,000 over the course of 10 years. So now imagine if you and you and you and you, that's 18,000, 18 times 1,000. Okay, so last time around in 2010, the census happened, and about 35% of Chippewa County residents did not do the census initially. 35%. Now times that by 18,000. That's a lot of money, and our area depends on a lot of federal money. And so if we don't get an accurate count, like we are losing a lot. Your hospital, your roads, your schools, different nonprofit organizations, federal funding for schools, for students to get into, FAFSA or what maybe it is, for the tribe. Like there's a lot of money that's at stake, infrastructure, job training, ton of it. So if we don't get that accurate count, we are losing out. The other thing is for women in business is that this is jobs, right? These are people who are outside of our area who are looking in and they want to know where we're at. How many people do we have? What is the economics? What's the education level? How many renters versus how many homeowners? Because that's going to be the deciding factor whether they want to invest in this community or not. So if we don't have very many people here because we're not doing the census, people aren't going to come here. And you might even see government programs, Coast Guard, other organizations that are like, we just don't see the numbers. We can't really, why would we be here? Okay, so we want to make sure you all know people. You have your amazing network of women and families and communities and nonprofits and colleagues. Talk about the census. Tell them that it's coming up. It's April 1st. So I have over here this, and I have a lot of census information. So one of the things, first census mostly will be online this year, which is new. Hasn't been like that before. And so you're going to get a unique ID number on a postcard mailed to you, and then you use that ID number to go and do the census for your household. It's small form. It's not very long. I have a sample right here if you wanted to look at it. It'll be much larger. This is like little pieces of paper. But the questions they're brief. It's not hard. It's very secure. So that's one of the things that we've learned along the way is that a lot of people don't answer this or potentially won't answer the census because they're afraid that their information is going to get out, or they're afraid that some of the issues also is that people live in this area because they want to get away from government. And so if you want to get away from government, why would you give government this information? That being said, for every person, we lose $18,000. So we don't want, even those that are living out in a trailer in the middle of the woods, like they count. We need them to be counting. And so we have in this area there's a high rate of people who likely will not answer census, which means it's on all of us to really work hard to make those connections and find people. And one of the ways is by getting a census job. So when I said that a lot of it's online, we know that a lot of people don't have internet access, or they don't have broadband, or it's not reliable. Maybe they don't go to the library often. And so typically that's when a census worker will come to you. So after like 2 or 3 times of trying to contact you via phone or whatever it may be, they can't get you. So now a census worker comes with their fancy clipboard and says, well, we have this form for you. They're not hiring as many people as they did in the past, since so much of it is online now. However, that being said, there are still census jobs to be had. So if you know somebody who is looking for a flexible job, $14 an hour, you make the time. So if you only want to work Tuesdays from 2 to 6, you can do that. And paid training, and the mileage is also paid for. So it's, you don't have to have a master's degree. You just are serving your country by making sure we get an accurate count and that all Michigan people are counted. Okay, so I have these. If you know anybody, or if you have a desk that you can put them on at work, that would be great. Inside of it is also information about voting, which is a great pivot point. So Tuesday is Michigan's primary presidential election. And without getting into all the differences between caucuses and primaries and blah, 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 it's an important day because this is your opportunity to have your voice, right? And in Michigan, because of the Secretary of State, we actually are going to be getting 2 ballots. Not all states are getting 2 ballots, one for the Republican side and one for the Democrat side. So you get to choose, and there are, if I remember correctly, there might be 2 Republicans, and then 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there. They're dropping out so fast on the Democrat side. I'm not really sure anymore. But there are. So you get to vote. Tuesday, polls open at 7, close at 8, and there is absentee voting going on. If you're not registered to vote, you can still register now. I have papers for you, and I will go and deliver them for you. And if you know anybody who's not registered, they can show up at the clerk's office, either county clerk or city clerk. Unfortunately, we already missed the deadline to do voter registration online, but they can register in person at the clerk. And we also in Michigan, because of voters, have same-day voter registration. So if they're procrastinating, you can show up on the day of, but you have to go to your clerk, you register to vote, and then you actually show up at your polling place, and then you can vote. For those that are doing absentee, which is super cool because back prior to 2 years ago, you couldn't do, most of you couldn't do absentee voting. You had to be much older. But now you can. And you can do it from your jammies at home on a Saturday, which is fantastic. And so absentee voting is easy. I also have applications for that. And you can apply for your application. And right now, even if you had voted for somebody, a lot of people don't know this, but if you had already voted for one of the presidential candidates and they have dropped out, you can actually vote again because otherwise your vote wouldn't count. So if you want to, like you call it spoil your ballot, your absentee application, you can, or your absentee ballot, and you can vote again, as long as your clerk receives your new ballot, your new absentee ballot by Saturday at 2, and that's a mailed version, or in person by Friday by 4. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay, so that's voting. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the Citizens Redistricting Commission. And this one I'm very, very excited about. And it goes along with census. So census, right, we're trying to find out where we are all at this moment in time. Once we have those numbers, December 31st, those numbers are delivered to the President of the United States of 2020. And then just shortly after that, our Citizens Redistricting Commission is taking all of those numbers and they're drawing our district. So up until just recently, the law of the land was gerrymandering rules the day. And if you don't know what gerrymandering is, that basically means politicians draw the lines. They decide who gets to be their voters. It didn't matter what you wanted. And they strategically, both parties did this, and candidates did, or not candidates, but actually elected leaders did this. They literally tried to make the lines work in such a way where your voice or your community wholeheartedly doesn't have a voice, don't even count. It's completely waste of your time. But voters in 2018 voted on an initiative that said, that's not how it's going to be anymore, and we're going to have citizens doing this. So nonpartisan, a little collection of Democrats, a little collection of Republicans, all getting together, 13 special people, and that process right now to select those people is happening now, and it ends June 1st. So if you really want to serve your state, and really actually your country, because there's not too many people who get to do this opportunity, there's applications to do this. The one caveat is you have to get it notarized. So the Secretary of State has already received a lot of these applications, but they weren't notarized. So make sure you get it notarized. You would make, if you are selected, make a quarter of what the governor makes, so about $40,000, traveling the state, learning about the different communities, and literally redrawing the lines so that we all have fair representation and we no longer have wasted votes. It is incredible. I just moved from Virginia, Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, and we are fighting so hard for this. And we can't get it because we have both Democrats and Republicans who get to make the rules, and we don't have access to the citizen initiative like Michigan does. So Michigan, like California, has people power where people can actually write the legislation and pass it, unlike a lot of other states. So it's a really amazing people power, is winning the day when it comes to Michigan on this one. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, I can keep going on. Allison.